Time to talk some Giants football. Manchild Show with Boy Green Digital. Today's broadcast brought to you by our friends at Box Drop, the mattress and sofa outlet. You can save 30 to 70%. Who wouldn't want to do that during the holidays? So if you're a first responder, how about 35 to 75? We'll throw in an extra 5% for you. Reach out to our friends at Box Drop, and we'll have some more information on our friends at Box Drop in just a moment. But let's talk all things Giants. We do that every week with our Giants insider from Big Blue View. It's the one, the only Ed Valentine. What's up, Ed? How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good to be with you. Christmas
all done with
Eve,
you. All done with your shopping.
Boy Green, done with the shopping? No, that looks like a no for Boy Green.
It's the thing that gets me. It's the last second stuff. So I thought I did a pretty good job, and then you go, oh, geez. It's the stocking. And again, we did it on another one of our interviews. I did the whole rigmarole about how the intricacy of what I have to get in the stocking. It's not just
his significant other has an entire list of him for the stockings, and he must go out and get these things to put in the stocking. Like, he doesn't have the choice of choosing things himself. He must operate from the list. It's hilarious. Unbelievable.
So I've not done that yet.
Man.
He's very well organized, and I like it.
Fortunately for me, I mean, my wife does 100% of the shopping for everybody else.
Oh, nice.
And all I have to do is not screw up getting things for her.
Okay.
That's all I have. That's all I have to do.
One job only, baby.
Just one job.
Very nice.
Job well. Okay. I like that. I like that, Ed. Okay. Well, Chance, I'm still hearing them. Wait. Yeah, I'm still hearing that. We're number one, Ed. Chance of we're number one. It has nothing to do with making the Super Bowl, obviously, but it does have to do with where the Giants stand currently in the draft rankings coming up for April. So let's talk about it. There it is. Boy Green has put it on the big board with another loss, and we'll talk about the loss. The Giants remain as the number one pick in this year's NFL draft if we would have it today. But boy, Ed, a big game looming, and we'll break it down and talk all about it. You didn't think anybody would care about Giants and the Vegas Raiders. Guess what? Everybody that cares about the draft cares about the Giants and the Raiders because it's likely going to decide who has the number one overall pick. Give me your sense a little bit here about what this feels like. I mean, should this be happy, happy, joy, joy, and we're rolling into the holiday season, or should this be somewhat depression? I mean, I saw the shots of Brian Burns, and we can talk about Burnsy and how he's feeling about all this losing. But let's talk about where the Giants stand today.
Well, you know how this goes because the Giants have been here a bunch of times the last few years where they had the possibility of maybe not getting the number one pick, but of getting a really high pick. And I think 3 or 4 times in the last half dozen years, they've gone and won a game or two down the stretch and sort of, you know, for the folks that really want that number one pick, they've sort of screwed that up. You know, and sometimes that's been fine because I remember a couple of years ago, everybody was upset at the end of the year that the Giants beat Washington and lost the number 2 pick because everybody wanted Chase Young.
Yes. And
the Giants picked 4th and got Andrew Thomas. And, you know, who got the better end of that deal? You know, so sometimes it doesn't matter. I mean, Chase Young is more or less a journeyman, you know, edge defender, and Andrew Thomas is an all-pro caliber left tackle. So I think the Giants made out just fine. Even last year, yeah, everybody was all upset that the Giants didn't get the number 1 pick and didn't get Cam Ward. But I think in the long run, they'll be just fine with Abdul Carter and Jaxson Dart.
Yeah, so, I think the reason I'm pushing for number 1, Ed, is just simply because I think that number 1 could turn into some more assets, and I think that's something the Giants obviously could really use.
And that is the thing about the number 1 pick this year, because, and I'm sorry if you think that the Giants should trade Jaxson Dart and draft Fernando Mendoza, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I just can't. You know, I can't help you. I can't go there. I don't understand that line of thinking, especially when a lot of quarterback knowledgeable draft analysts are beginning to say that they would draft Jaxson Dart before Fernando Mendoza in this upcoming draft. So I can't help you if that's how you think, because why would you start over when there's no guarantee that Jaxson Dart's going to be, that all pro caliber quarterback, but he's shown flashes of possibly being that. And why wouldn't you want to work with that and find out when you've already got that in the building? But I certainly get the idea of that number one pick, because the Giants don't need the quarterback. That number one pick could be so valuable to them, because let's put it this way. If they have the number one pick, what do the Jets have right now? Four.
That is correct. Yeah.
Suppose they trade that pick to the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
The Giants are going to take the same player at number one that they were going to take at number four, that they'll take at number four. Okay. So you've got to trade down. You've got to trade down. You've got to make the most out of the assets that you have. And that used to be my issue with Dave Gettleman. Dave Gettleman could identify talent, but Dave Gettleman didn't know how to maximize assets. And I sometimes wonder if Joe Shane, with some of the moves that he's made, has had a little bit of that same sort of inability to maximize the assets that he's got at his disposal. But it's a no-brainer for the Giants to trade that number one pick, to a quarterback needy team, for Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore, if somebody likes Moore better. It's a no-brainer. And you maximize your assets, you try to build your roster, and you go forward from there.
Who has the edge here, though, Ed? Because the Giants just barely lost to the Minnesota Vikings. The Raiders just barely lost to the Texans. So who has the edge in this matchup? Not to win. Who has the edge to lose in this game? Because it gets to the number one pick.
This is what we're talking about, Ed.
Do I have to lose? Do I have to? Look. Both of these teams are 2-13. They both. Right. Look. If there's one thing we know, they both know how to lose. Okay. They both know how to lose. All right. And look, if you want to talk about who has the edge in knowing how to lose, I would give it to the Giants, simply because I think I've paid more attention to the Giants. and every single week you see them find inventive ways, unique ways, strange ways to lose football games. And every single week you look at it and you go, couple of plays and they win that football game. One kick and they win that football game. One defensive stop and they win that football game. And they can't do it. Whether it's a top tier NFL team or a bottom feeder, they can't seem to figure it out. So I don't know. I'll believe that the Giants will win when I actually see them win.
Did you find it strange at all, Ed, the Giants' approach against Minnesota? This ended up being a close game and could have been won by the Giants. Their approach to not throw the ball, I was thinking something strange in the water here.
Well,
they went what, I don't know, 19 straight plays or something like that before they threw their first pass.
It was 15 straight plays at one point without a pass. Okay. And the caveat to that is that there were a couple of dropbacks that became sacks.
Okay.
There were a couple of plays there were a couple of times when the ball was thrown and there were penalties called that negated the play. So there were some passing plays mixed into that. And it's Mike Kafka said after the game that they wanted to establish the run, and it wasn't initially his intent to go quite as run heavy as they went. But he said it was working, it was functioning, the ball was moving, so they stayed with it. So like I said, I think that was, sometimes we scream at coaches for not adjusting and not sticking with what works. And in this case, I think we're screaming at Kafka for sticking with what worked to an extreme. So we're on the other end of that. But yeah, I mean, there were opportunities. There were places where the Giants probably should have thrown the ball. They should have maybe used a little play action early on first down and things like that. And I think from the tone of Mike Kafka's media availability on Monday, I think in retrospect, he knows that.
Ed, you asked a question in the press conference, and it's certainly a question that was on the minds, I think, of some Giants fans coming out of this game, and that was the question about quarterback regression here. Are we seeing Jaxson Dart stepping back a little bit, dare I say, from what he was doing earlier this season? Now, I know he's been banged up. We know about the concussions. We know about the situation the Giants in. I think all those things have to be taken into consideration. Mike Kafka didn't think that that's really true. Give me your thoughts about what it is that you're seeing with Jaxson Dart right now in terms of, is he regressing? Is he going in the wrong direction here? And should that be a concern for Giants fans going forward?
Well, here's what I wrote about that is, look, this was week 16 of the season. Okay. And when you think about all of the games that Jaxson Dart has started, for me, this was the first time that Jaxson Dart looked like a confused rookie. Okay. We've been waiting. What rookie quarterback goes through an entire season and doesn't have a game or multiple games like that during his rookie season? And it was almost like the Giants had looked into the crystal ball and they knew this was coming this week because they talked about it. They talked about the chaos. And Minnesota doesn't have its best defense ever. This year they've got a largely mediocre defense, but they have Brian Flores. They have veteran players. They have the ability to clutter up the mind of a young quarterback. And that's exactly what they did. When Jaxson Dart was back in the pocket, you could tell he was looking around and he didn't know what he saw. At other times, there was so much pressure, he didn't have a chance to see anything. And like I said, I think the Giants knew that was coming and they had a feeling the game would be that way. Do I think Jaxson Dart is regressing? No, not necessarily. I think he played a bad game. I think, does he miss Brian Daboll? Perhaps, in a sense, just because of the relationship that they had. Was it wrong to fire Brian Daboll? No. But I don't necessarily see Jaxson Dart as regressing. The other thing I will say is when Daboll was the head coach, one of the things that the Giants did was, they relied so much on Jaxson Dart's legs as a designed runner. Kafka hasn't done that the last couple of weeks. Part of that might be to protect Dart from himself a little bit. And I'm okay with that. The other reason I'm okay with that is in the long run, it probably benefits him to play from the pocket and learn, not to rely on his running ability to make plays all the time. There's a happy medium in there somewhere, but I'm okay with them sort of forcing him to learn to play, without being a running back first.
And just to follow up on Dart, so there's a few people that have sort of brought up this regression thing, and you can make a debate multiple ways whether you think it is or isn't. But let's just say it is, that there's been this Dart regression since Brian Daboll has gone, basically. That's where a lot of people are drawing the line in the sand. If that's true, what does that mean? What are we saying? So, okay, people are like, there's been regression since Daboll's been fired. Then what's the point of bringing that up? To say that the Daboll firing was a mistake, or is it to say that like Dart is suddenly not have something that he had before? I don't understand the point. So you pointed out, okay, but what's the point of pointing it out? Like, what does that mean? What are they trying to say, I guess?
I'm having a hard time figuring that one out myself for the simple reason that, look, Brian Daboll pushed for Jaxson Dart. Okay. That much is clear. Dart and Daboll had a good relationship. That much is clear. But the other thing that was clear was Brian Daboll wasn't winning enough football games as head coach of the New York Giants, and that wasn't changing. The locker room culture was out of control. There's no discipline, no accountability. and that showed up on the field. It was clear that Brian Daboll didn't have a future as Giants head coach beyond this season. So you had to move on. And if people want to go to, Brian Daboll's the only head coach that really would work with Jaxson Dart, give me a break. He's not the only good quarterbacks coach, good offensive coach out there. He's not the only guy out there who will figure out a way to maximize Jaxson Dart's skills. Mike Kafka has been put in a very difficult situation. I had hoped maybe he would show enough to be the head coach long term, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's sort of shown that he's not up to it. But I think the idea that they should have kept Daboll just because of Dart is wrongheaded, because football, it's a 53-man team.
Talking with Ed Valentine, Big Blue View. He's our Giants insider. It's the Manchild Show with Boy Green Digital. And today's broadcast brought to you by our friends at Box Drop Mattress and Sofa. We'll just hear a little bit more from our friends at Box Drop in a couple of minutes. But I want to ask you this Brian Flores question first, Ed. So you mentioned Flores. The Giants face him. He's the defensive coordinator of the Minnesota Vikings. It's interesting. The Giants are in this coaching search. This is a man who has prior head coaching experience and has actually fared fairly well. A lot of people thought he was unjustly fired, but then he's got this tricky lawsuit. And in this lawsuit, he talks about the Giants having interviewed him and maybe them being biased. Is there any chance, the fit seems good, but obviously there are problems here looming, that the Giants would even interview Brian Flores for their head coaching job?
Well, all right. I get people asking me about Flores, fairly frequently. And look, in a lot of ways, Brian Flores would be a great fit for the New York Giants as the head coach. In my view, and I've been reaching out to some people who know Flores a little bit better than I do to try to find out, what they think. But in my view, right now, I don't think there's any chance that would happen. I mean, Brian Flores is suing the New York Giants because of what happened in 2022, because he's calling that a sham interview and all of that. And I know this much. I know that John Mara wanted Brian Flores to be part of the discussion for the head coach. And I feel like Brian Flores would have gotten that job if John Mara had wanted to push to make that happen. But he had a first-year GM that he had just hired in Joe Shane. There was a lot of discussion that John Mara was very sensitive to at that point about too much Mara family involvement in football decisions. He wanted very much to step back and let his brand new GM make the head coaching decision. So, and he didn't, because otherwise you kind of kneecap the guy before he gets to do anything as the GM.
Right.
So he allowed Joe Shane to make the Brian Daboll decision. My 2 cents, I think that if John Mara had exercised full control over that hiring in 2022, I think Brian Flores would have been the Giants coach in 2022. And I think that's why it's a shame that Brian Flores chose to take the route that he did in suing the NFL and suing the Giants, because as long as that's hanging over their heads, I don't think there's a chance that John Mara turns back to Brian Flores. That's my personal opinion. I don't have inside information on that. As I said, I've been poking around trying to find out more if I can, but as long as that lawsuit is there and as long as those feelings are there, I don't think there's any chance. But it's a shame because Brian Flores has so many of the things that I think are important in this next coaching hire, in terms of being able to walk in with some credibility, in terms of being able to walk in with a pedigree, in terms of being able to walk in and set a culture and hold people accountable, in terms of having connections to the New York, New Jersey region, which is something that I think is important, simply because I think it's important to understand the market that you're walking into.
Yeah.
And I think that the guys that have been successful with the Giants, and Bill Parcells and Tom Coughlin, before they became Giants head coach, had connections not only to the Giants, but they had deep connections to the New York, New Jersey region. And I can't prove that, but I think there's something to having some understanding of the market that's helpful. But I think Brian Flores in a lot of ways would be perfect. I just, under the current circumstances, don't see how it could happen.
Yeah, I think I agree on both fronts, Ed. So really good analysis on that. We're talking with Ed Valentine, Big Blue View. It's the Manchild Show with Boy Green Digital. Don't forget to pop that subscribe button. Today's broadcast is brought to you by our friends at Box Drop Mattress and Sofa. Let's just take 30 seconds to learn a little bit more about our friends from Box Drop. Considering that we sleep nearly 1/3 of our lives, buying the right mattress is essential. At Box Drop Syracuse Mattress and Sofa Outlet, you'll get a unique experience, one that saves you 30 to 70% off retail prices on top-of-the-line mattresses like Sapphire Sleep. At Box Drop, you'll schedule a mattress fitting appointment and get one-on-one service directly with Paul, the owner. No middleman. Family-owned, huge savings, no-pressure sales designed to save you time and money. And now Box Drop Syracuse has sectional sofas and love seats as well, with prices designed to fit your budget. Box Drop Syracuse Mattress and Sofas. Set up your appointment today at boxdropsyracuse.com. All right, we are back talking Giants football inside the Giants with Ed Valentine. It's the man-child Jim Lurch, Paul Boy Green Esden Jr., and of course you. Thanks for tuning in, folks. So you can hit that thumbs up, like if you like what you're seeing and hearing on our videos as we break down Giants football. Here we are in Christmas week. I was reading that piece, Ed, about Brian Burns, and Brian Burns, who has been an outstanding player for the Giants this year, one of their best, probably their best defender. He's going to go back to, I'm sure, another Pro Bowl this year.
Well, actually, let's just
right. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's get the breaking news in here in the middle of our recording. Brian
Mm.
Burns has been selected as a Pro Bowl starter. So let's save your question. I don't want that to get lost, but this is breaking news. So let's get to it. And it appears this is the only Giants Pro Bowler. I'll confirm that here in a second. But Brian Burns, Pro Bowl. Are you surprised? And is this deserving?
I'm not at all surprised, and it's 100% deserving. Brian Burns is a guy who, over the 2 years that he's been a Giant, I mean, I have gained a ton of respect for Brian Burns. A year ago, he dragged himself through the last 4, 5, 6 games of the season, basically on one leg. When the season was over and the Giants, again, they were 3-14. And he was productive, basically playing on one leg. And you would ask him, you would say, Brian, why? Why are you doing this? Because I'm standing in front of your locker and you can barely get out of your chair, and I can see how much pain you're in. And he said, this is my job. He says, this is my job. This is what I'm supposed to do. And I'm glad that Burns is getting the recognition. When I look at Brian Burns, you realize that that man played for the Carolina Panthers, and now he's played for the Giants. And not only has he never gone to the playoffs, that man has never been on a football team that's had a winning season. And if anybody deserves to play on a really good team, on a team that wins, on a team that competes for a ring, it's Brian Burns, because he does things the right way. On the field, off the field, he's accountable. He's one of the players who's always at his locker, who will always talk to you if you stop by and you have a question for him, whether it's quote unquote his day to speak or not. He'll always talk to people. He's one of those guys who tries to lead his teammates. So this is absolutely deserving. And for me, fingers crossed that whether it's with the Giants or somewhere else someday, Brian Burns finds himself on a team that wins a lot of football games.
And
Hopefully,
just to confirm, he is the only Pro Bowler this season for the New York Giants. So that just confirmed moments ago.
Let's just hope some of this is rubbing off on Abdul Carter. Is any of this rubbing off on Abdul Carter, Ed? Constantly monitoring his progress here. I mean, he is an important piece of this future, I think, for a lot of Giants fans, at least in their minds.
Well, I do think whether it's Brian Burns or whether it's Mike Kafka, Finally holding Carter's feet to the fire. I do think that Abdul Carter has begun to understand the value of being a pro, the value of doing things correctly, the value of studying properly, and all of those things. I think Charlie Bullen, the interim defensive coordinator, is helping him too by using him in some more creative ways. But I do think there's been some progress with Carter, some development with Carter. I think he's got sacks now in 3 consecutive games. He's been a force in all of those games since the last time he got benched. So I think there's progress there. You just hope that it stays that way, because that's a young man with as much talent as just about any edge rusher in the league.
Ed, any updates on the coaching search? Boy Green loves to point out to me anytime there are rumors swirling, and he was back on the Notre Dame head coach, Mr. Freeman's bandwagon this week, saying, there's a lot of
they're seriously interested, or Tom College Target and stuff coming out.
There's a lot of smoke there, and listen, you have to think that that's real. Okay, listen. Tim McDonnell, nephew of John Mara, one of the Giants. I think his title is Director of Player Personnel. Tim McDonnell has deep ties to the Notre Dame, to Notre Dame football. Joe Shane is an Indiana guy. I don't know, what sort of internal ties Joe has to Notre Dame, but I think the Giants look at Marcus Freeman, and they look at this merry-go-round that they've been on, okay, with, a new coach every 2 years, Ben McAdoo, and then Pat Shurmur, and then Joe Judge, and now Brian Daboll, 3.5 years. They want to get off that merry-go-round. They want some stability. They want somebody who can be there for 10 years, 12 years. Somebody who can be there like John Harbaugh in Baltimore for 18 years, or Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh for 20 years, or however long it's been. And I think they look at Marcus Freeman, and they think that if it works, he's a guy that can do. The question is, will it work? I've talked to people. I had a guy on my YouTube show the other day, college football analyst Joe DeLeon, who is a Giants fan and also has covered Notre Dame, who's not sure that it would work because of the learning curve for Marcus Freeman. But there's got to be interest there. There's too much smoke. I honestly think the Giants want to wait until the end of the season and see who else comes available, on the coaching carousel, and go from there. There was John Harbaugh from Baltimore was asked on Monday about his job security, and said he really didn't know. And, if John Harbaugh becomes available, then maybe the pecking order of coaching candidates for the Giants changes. That would be a nice find to stumble into for the Giants.
A little gift under the tree for Ed. A little gift under the tree. John Harbaugh available. Giants available. Marriage, perhaps. I don't want to poo-poo the Freeman thing, because I have a lot of respect for what that young man, or that young man has done for Notre Dame. And there seem to be a lot of people out in the football world that seem to think very highly of his leadership abilities. What scares me is that this would be a swing for the fences for the Giants, that could potentially be a home run, but it could also be, go through the shortstop's legs.
Right.
And this guy's just not right for pro football. And I don't know that this Giants franchise at this moment in time, with apparently a quarterback, heir in place here, and a chance to build a roster around that, and another high draft pick coming their way, maybe as high as number 1, that they would, go to a guy that is a tremendous swing, but could also be a tremendous failure. I mean, I love big swings. I don't know if this organization at this moment in time should be taking a swing like that. That's what scares me about Freeman.
No, I hear you. And I hate to say it, but as soon as you mentioned going through the shortstop's legs, I thought about Bill Buckner.
Yeah, me too.
I thought about Bill Buckner, but look,
he was a first baseman, not a shortstop. But yes, I tried to stay away from that Buckner reference. Go ahead.
But you're 100% right. And when I talked to Joe DeLeon, college football analyst, Joe brought up the fact that Marcus Freeman, he's not an offensive play caller, schemer. He's not a defensive, schemer. He's a CEO. He's a leader. He's a culture builder. He's those things. But he's been successful at Notre Dame for two reasons: because he can recruit his butt off, and because he's very, very good at building relationships with 18 to 22-year-old men. Neither of those things apply in the NFL. So can Marcus Freeman, who's never coached in the NFL, basically had a training camp with an NFL team, almost 15, 16 years ago, and other than that has no connection to the NFL, can he adjust to the NFL? Can he hire coaches, with that can help him? Can he hire the right offensive coordinator? Can he hire the right defensive coordinator without any real ties to the NFL? And can he learn, how to handle 30-year-old men instead of, 18-year-old kids? Those are all, valid questions. So, and the other thing about it that Joe had pointed out to me was, he said he thinks, like, if, let's say, for example, the Pittsburgh Steelers decide and Mike Tomlin decided that it was time to move on, Marcus Freeman might be a great candidate in Pittsburgh for the simple reason that they have a stable front office. They have a structure. They have a culture. They have all of that stuff put in place for Marcus Freeman to lean on as he learns the NFL ropes. Do the Giants really have that with an embattled GM and a front office who we sometimes aren't sure, who's making what decision, and you've got dual ownership, and you've got family members in the front office, and you've got all that stuff. So do the Giants have the right structure, the right culture already in place to help Marcus Freeman figure it out? I don't know that the answer to that is yes.
Ed, this is such a hard question because I understand these guys are pros. You're around them a lot. The pride that they take in their job. We're just talking about Brian Burns and all the pride that he takes in his job. But this game against the Raiders is fascinating to me. I mean, we've got 2-2-12 teams. As I said, this is likely going to result in who gets the number one overall pick in the draft. Give me a scouting report on this game. Give me a pulse of what we should expect from the Giants in this game. Does the Giants or the Giants organization make any decisions in this game about shutting down a few guys in light of the situation? How do you think this is going to play out this weekend?
Well, Mike Kafka has already said Jaxson Dart's playing. So I think if you're looking at shutting down guys, I don't think that's going to happen. Does Mike Kafka want to go off into the sunset or wherever his next job is going to be? Does he want to go off to wherever with an 0-7 record as an interim head coach? They want to win a football game. Okay. The players, the coaches, the people in the locker room, they want to win a football game. Is that the best thing for the franchise? Maybe not. Obviously we know it would be, on paper, it would be a great thing, for the Giants to be able to turn one pick into 3 or 4 picks. If, of course, they use those picks properly. The last time the Giants turned one pick into 3 or 4 picks, they passed on Micah Parsons and drafted Kadarius Toney. Okay. so
taking me back, Boy Green. It's happening again.
sorry, Jim. But you have to use those picks properly, but it does give them an opportunity. And I fully understand people saying the best thing for the franchise would be to lose the game. But those guys, those guys want to win a football game. And I understand that. And I'm certainly not going to tell, they're putting their bodies on the line. They're putting their work on film for the next head coach or for the next team that they might have, the next opportunity they might be looking for in the NFL. So they want to do their best. And, it's hard because I fully get the benefit of the Giants landing with the number 1 pick.
Perhaps we could just be a little less than our best, just a tad, a little less, around our best, but not quite our best.
Well,
it's awful. I know it's such an awful spot. Oh,
you can do things like play Deonte Banks for 100% of the snaps.
Yeah, there you go. Play some of those guys that have been.
You can do that kind of stuff. You can you can play Jalen Hyatt a whole bunch and throw him the ball. You can do stuff like that.
Yeah. Even Theo Johnson hasn't been all that reliable as well, Ed, with the
no,
and what's going on with him here in year 2.
Unfortunately, he has not, and neither has Darius Slayton, who's a great guy, and I was happy to see come back to the Giants, but has not helped his quarterback at all.
One last one here on this draft thing, going under the assumption the Giants have the number 1 pick and the Jets want it badly, which we know that they do to get the quarterback. Here's the thing that I'm not sure I'm completely checking the boxes here or getting the puzzle of. Everyone knows the Giants aren't going to take a quarterback. Let's just say the Jets are sitting at 2 or 3. Okay. Why would the Jets give up assets when they know the Giants aren't going to take the guy they want? They might just sit and wait. So have the Giants, by finding Dart in some weird way, limited their ability to capitalize on having the number 1 overall draft pick? Boy Green, you're shaking your head. Go ahead. You respond. Response.
Well, because let's say this, right? Giants have number 1 overall pick. Jets have number 2 overall pick. Raiders have 3. Jets we know you're not
trade with the Raiders, right?
Yeah, 100. That's exactly it.
Right.
If I'm the Jets and I have the assets, right? In a perfect world, every Jets fan in the universe wants to get their franchise quarterback and keep their bountiful of picks to build around him. So I get the initial arrogance of Giants, you take whoever the hell you want because we know we're getting our quarterback at 2. And the Raiders go, bring. Giants, I don't care. I don't know what's going on with the Jets. We'll give it to you. Raiders leapfrog, take the quarterback. And at this current moment, we don't know if Dante Moore is going to be in the draft. So right now it's a 1 quarterback race. It could be a 2 quarterback race. Maybe things get spicier from that perspective. Jets know they're getting one of the 2 if they like both. But that's what I would say. All right, Jets, you don't want it? We'll call your bluff. Hey, Raiders, Browns, whoever you are.
And that's exactly it. Because if you're the Jets, let's say Dante Moore does enter the draft, Oregon quarterback Dante Moore. Okay. If you're the Jets and you're sitting at 2 and you could care less which quarterback you get out of Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore, then you sit tight and you make all kinds of noise and you force the Raiders to come up and take the guy that they want. Okay. But it rarely happens, especially at the quarterback position, where a team will say, well, I don't care if I get this guy or that guy. All right. It rarely happens. So if you want Fernando Mendoza, the worst thing you can do is sit there and let somebody and think, oh, the Giants will take a position player. Mendoza will be available to me at 2. The worst thing you can do is let somebody jump you and take the quarterback that you wanted. So you pay the price. You make sure that you get the guy that you wanted, and you go from there. That's the worst thing you can do is have an opportunity to get the quarterback that you love and let somebody else take him away from you.
Yeah, I can't. I know whatever the Jets would say publicly in that scenario, right? Let's say they're at 2, they stay at 2, they end up with Dante Moore, Fernando. They'll say we love them both. Sure,
Yeah,
BS.
yeah.
That's what you were going to sell to your fans. But inside that building, there's no way. All right, you scout go to that side of the room. You scout go to that side of the room. And you come back. Wow, our reports are exactly identical. We love him exactly the same. We grade the arm strength exactly the same. The average is perfect. Of course, they're going to prefer one or the other. And if I'm the Jets, I pay the price. There's obviously I don't know who it is at this point, obviously, but whoever that guy is, that's worth it to pay the price, the iron price.
I do this thing every year called the Big Blue View Rules for Draft Success. And one of them talks about if you don't have a quarterback, if you don't have the guy that you believe in, you go get that guy. And you know what I've had people say to me and what I agree with is if whatever price you pay for that quarterback it doesn't matter what price you pay. It's like Joe Shane said, does anybody, if we hit on Jaxson Dart, is anybody really going to care that we gave up a 3rd round pick? Does anybody really remember, other than Phillip Rivers, does anybody really remember the players that the Giants gave up in the trade to get Eli Manning? Does anybody really care? No, they don't, because the Giants got 2 Super Bowls out of that. Now, if you're wrong, if you end up with Ryan Leaf, then you get yourself fired. Okay. Then Jamarcus Russell or somebody, then you get yourself fired.
Right.
But you take the swing. You take the swing. If that's the guy that you love, you take the swing. You don't let somebody else take him away from you. You just don't.
All right, BG. Pay, baby. Pay. All right. We'll see how it all goes this weekend. I don't know what I'm rooting for, a loss, a win. I don't know what I'm rooting for. We'll find out.
What if we get a tie?
A tie?
Wow.
What if we get a tie?
Would mess up everything. Wow. That would be quite the conundrum.
What if we get a tie?
Let's root for a tie. I like that. Let's root for a tie.
I have to
tell you. It gives me an alternative here.
I have to tell you a quick story before you guys let me go. Sunday was one of the few times over the years that I actually did not attend a Giants home game. I did not go to the game because we had a family holiday event scheduled for that evening. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the dinner started at 5:30. And of course, Giants played at 1. The game theoretically ends at 4:00. And I had to leave at 4:30 to get there and all that stuff. And I'm sitting there at about 10 minutes to 4, and the Giants have the ball with 3 minutes to go. And I'm like, I'm sitting there watching the game at home and doing my work. And I'm thinking, they're going to mess up my entire evening by going into overtime. They're just going to mess up. So maybe there was a small part of me that was happy that Darius Slayton dropped the ball. Just maybe
slightly selfish reasons. All right, let's end it on a positive note, Ed, and that is we've been doing Christmas questions. This will be our last one this year. Is there a Valentine family tradition? Is there something that you must do with your family? I know you have the grandkids now, so probably your traditions have even changed a little bit. Is there something you like to do either on Christmas, before Christmas, as part of your Christmas tradition? Share something.
Well, I think with the grandkids, I think our favorite thing, in fact, my wife and I were just talking about this yesterday. I think our favorite thing has become, going to my son's house on Christmas morning and just watching the grandkids open stuff, watching the blizzard, just sitting back and watching the fun and the joy of those kids. I think that's my favorite part of the day is
paper flying everywhere.
Wrapping paper flying everywhere. Kids screaming and crying because they open one present that they love and they want to tear it open and play with it. And mom and dad are like, you got 15 more to open. Let's get over here. Get over here and get something. Mom, I want to play with this. No, not until you've opened everything.
Not yet.
Yeah. So I think that's my favorite part of the day.
All right, Ed, thank you, holiday week specifically, but all season long for spending time with us. And we'll chat with you again next week where we'll know a little bit more about where we stand in the NFL draft. It's an ongoing discussion, that's for sure. Thanks, Ed Valentine.
Thanks, guys.